Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of OESA Supplier Insights. I'm Mike Jackson. I have the pleasure of serving as Executive Director of Strategy and Research at OESA. And today I'm joined by Jim Ward, partner at RSM. Jim, how are you today?
Doing well, Mike. It's great to be with you again.
Hey, listen, I appreciate the opportunity to gain some of your insights here on our fourth quarter OESA Supplier Barometer on the topic of talent and human resources. So an incredibly important topic here, as it's been a source of tremendous hardship, I think, for a lot of suppliers to find sufficient talent and clearly the right kind of talent here going forward as the industry continues to shift toward even higher levels of technology with the shift toward electrification. So let's just jump right in. Yeah. We've got a lot of content to go through. So not a big surprise, but if we look at our fourth quarter barometer results, we see that 36 is the reading here for the fourth quarter. 36 is 14 points below neutral. 50 being neutral. That means for the third quarter in a row, our supplier executives have responded that the 12-month outlook here over the past 3 months, it has changed, and each quarter it's actually gotten more pessimistic. And so this represents a pretty significant challenge, and yet not a big surprise, I don't think, right? Can you share a little bit on your side?
Yeah, no, it's reflecting certainly what I'm hearing with my clients and others that I speak with in the industry, that it's this unrelenting challenges from multiple angles, if you will, that they're working through. And I think this aspect, what you're seeing here is this ongoing, okay, this is not, whatever the disruption is, it's not viewed as this is going to be solved tomorrow. It's the reality of we've got to work through these, and it's going to take a little bit of time.
You're exactly right. And I think, look, obviously, here more recently, the economy continues to reflect, continued pressure. At the start of the year, there was expectation, transitory inflation, and yet we've seen that, remain, quite high, very elevated at historic highs. And moreover, it's endured for longer than what was initially expected. And so here we are, right? So not a big surprise that way. Let's continue on. So if we look at the top threats for the industry, what's maybe a little bit surprising here is production shutdowns due to supply chain shortages and issues. It remains the top threat. And I think, Jim, what's maybe a little surprising is we've actually heard from a number of members that production shutdowns and late notice has actually kind of spiked here in the past, month or two. And so it's not consistent, it's not persistent across the industry, but I do think it's another concern and does add, it compounds the issues, right? Obviously, this type of these late notices reflect a tremendous amount of pressure on suppliers as they're incurring incremental costs on logistics, on keeping their employees. If shifts are called off, they have to continue to pay, or else they're going to lose that talent as well. So this is another cycle that I think has been impacting suppliers here for some time.
Yeah, and again, not surprising. It's at the top of the list, and it's the conversations I have. It is front and center to those discussions, and certainly, as we'll talk about further today, is the response to that and how to balance with the workforce as that is happening, because there is that effect that it has for sure.
No, and that's a great point, because look, obviously the economy has continued to show greater risks, and so some additional weakness, prospects for recession. I mean, this is clearly a discussion point, and to this point, actually we're actually partnering on a program here on December 7th, that Wednesday, our next strategic insight session on recession planning. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have our partner Bart Huthwaite, who is a supply chain specialist and management consultant, joining you and speaking with regard to how to one, respond and be looking forward to these changes and challenges that we're seeing in that space.
Hey, really excited about that program. Obviously, very timely as we look ahead, and growing calls for further weakness here as of the first quarter. And so this is certainly something we'll keep a close eye on. To
Yeah.
that end, obviously, we look at higher interest rates as well. We know that it's impacting suppliers and our supplier members having to finance and their capital expenditures here as we look ahead to 2023 and beyond. With that, let me just jump ahead to our next slide.
Sure.
So here, if we look at talent, it's so interesting here because we know that obviously COVID, the environment changed dramatically, and yet what we found is that organizations really had to shift. There wasn't really a playbook. And so what's remarkable is this current culture that we have versus this expected culture in the future. What's so interesting is that organizations are measuring this, and so the vast majority, nearly 90% of members respondents are measuring this. And so what's the magnitude of the gap? What's really interesting here is, there is a gap, certainly. And yet what's powerful, I think, is that the vast majority of supplier respondents are more than willing to embrace and to continue to revamp and work to close these gaps. And so I think this is really quite powerful and is kind of a testament of how far the industry's come since coming through the pandemic and more of these supply chain issues that we've experienced here over the past couple of years. So with that, what's interesting here is there has been a significant improvement. If we go back and think, a year ago, 62% of respondents indicated that they had a moderate to wide gap. And so there's actually been significant improvement. And I think part of that is what we're seeing is the amount of flexibility that suppliers are offering their employees. And so this is going a long way. So if we look at the next slide here, how do you see this playing out? Well, going forward, we see the vast majority of 42% indicate they see the gap narrowing. Some, about a quarter, a little over a quarter, see that gap widening. What's interesting here, if we look to the comments here on the right, does anything kind of stand out? I've got a couple that are highlighted here. And I look to the top, and I know that this work from home has been allowed workers a greater sense of they feel maybe a sense of appreciation in having the ability, the autonomy to work remotely. And I think this is powerful and positive. But at the same time, there's also a comment here. It says too much work from home can translate to a loss of knowledge transfer and reduce the sense of belonging of a company or a group. And I think this is kind of an important element. It just simply means that there's got to be balance. Are you seeing a little bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I can say within the RSM, this is a reality, and it's certainly a reality with our supplier clients. This aspect of we did change cultures and move literally overnight to having to adapt and respond in working at home. But this aspect of there are great benefits that have been lost because of that, I think are aware to most. So what jumps out at me here is certainly what you have highlighted, and I think it's bullet 4 here in this. In-person work helps. So that development and transfer of knowledge, I think, has shown itself as being much more difficult to do in a remote setting than having this balance of working together at periods of time. And it is going to be different and will continue to be different. But yeah, absolutely. This is a slide that definitely caught my attention for a careful read.
Well, and I think that's a great point because, look, you're absolutely right. Think of the organizations where a number of team members have joined. I mean, they've joined and yet haven't necessarily had as much opportunity to continue to grow and to work on their careers. And so I do think that there's certainly a lot of positives. Obviously, flexibility is very strong, and that does offer a great benefit. As you mentioned, for RSM, the same is true with OESA. We have some opportunities to work remote on Monday, Friday. We're in the office and we're engaged in meeting with our members and here in the office here on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Obviously, that doesn't have to be the same situation or same solution for everyone, but I do think that there's a great deal of value and an opportunity to have that balance. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great. So let's just keep moving ahead here.
Sure.
Programs to attract and retain talent. How do you see this playing out here going forward? I don't think this is a big surprise, given that talent is a key priority. More programs, almost 70%, This is been pretty compelling. Any thoughts here that kind of stand out?
Well, flexibility is certainly one that jumps out, and with the programs to attract and retain, just overall, I think is the reality that is awareness is the best start, right? Is recognizing it. With that as well is that what works today might not work tomorrow. So I think it's this continuing to be aware of that and staying as connected to our workforce as we can to understand what those challenges are and what the needs are going forward. But yes, this, the other one you do have highlighted here is this, early and mid-career rotational programs. Again, we're seeing that it's the challenges in the workforce. We see the importance of the workforce. We see clients that are doing more automation and this aspect of how to retrain this workforce into a different role than they may have started with, but taking a different focus and approach with more talented workforce in different areas.
That's a great point. I love the fact that you mentioned their early and mid-career. What's so compelling there is the idea that it does really kind of embed this notion, the culture of continual knowledge and continual learning. And I think this is really positive. The other thing I think is really interesting here, the second bullet point that's bolded from the bottom there is continuous assessment, trial and error of new programs. And this, I think, is really interesting, right? The idea of not being afraid to experiment, to try new things,
right,
to see what works and to continue to improve on that. So really, really interesting on this point, especially within the talent piece.
Yeah.
Jim, thank you so much for your expertise today. And everyone, thank you. And look for us next time with OESA Supplier Insights. Thanks and take care.
Thanks so much, Mike.